Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining moments that shape extraordinary people into who they've become. Today's guest is Kelly, a licensed therapist specializing in PTSD and OCD, a researcher, host of the Hillbilly, the Darker Side of Appalachia podcast, and a woman who describes herself as the absolutely not the type of therapist you might expect to encounter. She grew up in Central Appalachia, survived sexual assaults by her ex-husband, and has spent nearly a decade helping others navigate the kind of trauma that her region really gets to speak about out loud. Yeah, thank you so much. So Kelly, take us back to where you grew up. What is Central Appalachia, and not the caricature, but the real place? And what did growing up there teach you about resilience, community, silent and survivor?
That's a great question. So, where I'm from, Southwest Virginia, is a little community called Benhams. It's right outside of Bristol, Virginia. And one thing that I recall growing up that runs through the culture is that we don't really talk about the things that happen to us. It's like a silent resilience. What stays in the family, what happens in the family stays in the family. A lot of people, the culture, you don't go to the doctor for a long time. Therapy was, not really something that you would seek out, not really something that you would do. It's changing, but, it was not, things weren't necessarily always spoken of even within the family. It was just the idea of the bootstrap culture. You pick yourself up by your bootstrap and you just go on, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
They don't get better. Things just compound on top of one another. And, I don't want to paint the picture that, everybody in Appalachia is, broken, but because we're a very resilient people, it's just silence seemed to be sometimes like preferred than coming right out and saying, hey, this thing happened, or I'm struggling with, my emotions. It just wasn't a thing.
That was really cool of it. I could imagine how it would have been like growing up on that location where reporters keep everything to themselves, to their family without getting to be outspoken. You survive sexual assault by your ex-husband
Yes.
without asking you to carry out, speak to as much as you're willing. What did that experience do to your sense of safety, your trust, and your understanding of the system that was supposed to protect you?
That is an excellent question. It destroyed it. I worked around the system when it happened. I was actively working as a therapist, not in the judicial system, of course, but, as a therapist who confront a lot of people. And when I made the choice to press charges, I got thrown into the system and found out very quickly that people prefer you stay silent. They prefer that you don't name your perpetrator, and that when you do, you become ostracized by a lot of people. So you become the villain in your own story, even if you're not. And it took about 4 years fighting and holding my own and being stalked
Hmm.
by him and threatened. I had a protective order out against him that was violated twice, trying to get the police to do something about it, and them treating me like I was just, hysterical woman. And finally winning the case, him appealing, and then the case becoming case law, actually. So it's published now and it can help other people. So, I mean, it was worth those years of struggle and not remaining silent in a community and a system that prefers that you do. And I learned a lesson. And I remember telling my mom, friends, that it's almost as though people would prefer that I would have been murdered by him as opposed to
Hmm.
have been sexually assaulted because of, I guess, the stigma they now feel associated by, I guess, guilt by association. So they're putting it off on me. and blaming me instead of blaming him, because then they have to take ownership of, I guess,
Yeah.
whatever they're feeling, and that's not my fault. And now that I'm talking to you about it, the more that I think about it, I'm really glad that I didn't stay silent,
Yeah.
because by using my voice in an area where silence is very, very, like, what's the word? Very praised would be a good,
Hmm.
or the norm even.
Celebrated.
Yes, celebrated. That
Yeah.
is exactly it. Where it is celebrated, there is now case law that can help other women like me who are married, or, married at the time, or sexually assaulted by their husbands or partners. They now have case law that they can refer back to help them in
Yeah.
situations like that.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you for being the forerunner in respect of this, and giving other people voice owing to the fact that you're courageous enough to actually more like stand to it. And yeah, that's really amazing. So you have credit our branch house, a domestic violence organization in Northeast Tennessee, helping save your life. What did finding that support actually means, and what do you want people to understand about what it takes to reach out when you are in the kind of danger?
That's branch house. So the thing about my story is, where I'm from, we kind of straddle a state line. So Bristol is um, on both Virginia and Tennessee lines. So Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee. And when I fled, I was living on Virginia side, and I fled to the Tennessee side, a place called Kingsport. And they're all kind of very close together in a place called Tri-Cities. And I found Branch House, which is in Sullivan County, Tennessee. I was directed there after I he had violated the protective order in Tennessee. And when I got to Branch House, I was set up with a victim's advocate. It was in a location that was hidden. They were so amazing. Like, I was terrified to go in there, because I was just terrified in general. Like,
Yeah,
this man had left dead animals in my yard, on my doorstep, had tried to kill my Staffordshire, was sending me death threats online. So I was just terrified, and they made me feel very safe. They had a dog on premises. They had someone who had used to work for the police there that walked me through, you know, what I could expect in regard to the coming hearings. They were 24/7, it's open 24/7. They had therapists that were on premises. They basically had everything, and they were working to have sane or safe nurses there on premises and in other areas who could do sexual assault, like, examinations.
yeah,
And I did not need one, but the fact that they were getting people certified, nurses certified, and having them within that infrastructure so that people could come to that location, or they would go with them to hospitals so that they would not be alone while that was happening, was something that blew my mind. Because when you are fleeing any kind of domestic violence situation, whether sexual assault is involved or not, you're like in survival mode,
yeah,
you're going on pure adrenaline and instinct. And this place was like a safe haven. They set me up with a program that Tennessee has where they hid my address. Mail would be routed through a fake address and then be sent to me. Like, they just gave me all of these resources that I didn't know existed until I got there. And through them, I found a lot of support that I didn't even know was there. I didn't even know that it existed. They also helped me in, like, having him arrested and then extradited for the violation. So he violated and I ended up going to the police, and they couldn't get him. He violated, they had a warrant out, but they couldn't get him. I got hooked up with Branch House is how it worked. And they worked with the Sullivan County Police Department to show them that he was, violent enough that they needed to put extradition on the warrant so that Washington County, Virginia could go pick him up and put him in jail and hold him so that we could get him
Yeah.
locked up and keep me
Yeah.
safe. So, I mean, they helped me with that too. So, I just can't say enough about them. They're amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Oh, so you eventually pursue a master's in clinical health or counseling. How much of that decision was shaped by what you have personally survived, and what did walking into that training with your own life experience I'll give to you that curriculum alone could never?
Actually, none of it. None of this all happened after I had graduated, and I had been working as a therapist for a bit. That was used against me by his defense attorney in the trial. They tried to say that because I was a therapist, I should have known better and been able to protect myself against the assault. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It was a reach. But when I made a choice to become a clinical mental health counselor, it was because when I all through my training, I studied trauma because of my dad. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, and I don't know if it was like a God thing, a universe thing, however you want to look at it, but it just kind of trickled down to where it led, my life led me through my own trauma. I had the knowledge, and now I have the lived experience to go with the knowledge. Not that I wanted it, but I have it, so I might as well do something good with it.
Amazing, amazing. Ouch, that was really a whole lot. And I'm glad that despite it all, that was kind of a sharpening on the fact that you have the knowledge, you have the lived experience to really help others. So you specialize in PTSD and OCD, are two conditions that are profoundly misunderstood by the general public. What does your own experience of traumas inform about how you sit with clients who are carrying these diagnoses?
Great question. Ironically, I have both. And it helps because I'm very transparent when I when I sit with people, and I let them know. I call it my alphabet soup because I think everybody has their own issues.
Yeah.
If you're human, you're probably going through something. And with OCD specifically, the stigma around it is so much. It's so great because people are so afraid to talk about those intrusive thoughts that, when it's like, hey, yo, I have it too. So what you can talk about those intrusive thoughts, I get it. I do. I'm not going to you're fine here. It's a safe space. You're not going to shock me. You can see people go, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel okay, good. You're not going to 5150 and lock me up. Okay. No, I'm not. I've probably thought them too. It's fine. And it's really great to see people visibly relax and realize, oh my gosh, somebody gets it. And same thing with the PTSD. It's like, okay, so somebody gets it. I now have a space where I'm not just talking to someone clinically who's going to be reading from a book to me. I'm talking to someone who is meeting me where I'm at. And I've, a lot of times, a lot of the feedback I've gotten, and it really means a lot to me, is that people have told me that I really do meet them where they're at and that they really do feel seen and heard. And that makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my career, that I'm doing right by people, and I'm giving them a space where they are open and free to actually heal. And if you haven't ever felt seen or heard, to get to that point where somebody does is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah, a whole lot of that. So you describe yourself as an Appalachia's or therapist gone wrong, and an absolute not the type of therapist people expect. So what does that mean, and why do you think the traditional model of therapy sometimes fail the very people who need it the most?
Great question. I call myself that because I typically just approach my sessions from an existential therapeutic foundation primarily, but I usually just meet people and talk to them like we're talking, just very conversationally, and kind of see. I ask them what they need, what it is that they think that they need, and I'll pull from different modalities, but I don't always, unless it requires it, the session requires it. I don't always have a very structured perspective on how things should go. I feel like people already know inside them the solutions to whatever's going on in their lives. They just need someone to help them kind of pull it out sometimes. And sometimes, well, a lot of times that means using whatever belief system that person has, whatever values they have, because I think that people are their own experts at their, own lives. And so it's just kind of helping them realize, you know what? You already know your answers.
Yeah.
The modalities are just here to help you figure out what's going on inside of your head and bring some organization to the chaos. And I think that's a lot of times people can lose people by being overly traditional and overly like stiff and too focused on modality and not focused equally on person.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Especially when it comes to therapy, being that yes, there's a whole lot of underneath stuff in there that yeah, without even hearing their stories, you don't even know what to expect. Yeah, being structured sometimes can actually more like yeah, amazing. So you host called the Hillbilly, the Darker Side of Appalachia, and you write on Substack. What made you choose to use your voice publicly? And what do you hope those platforms do for people who recognize themselves in what you are talking about?
I have always wanted to do a podcast. I just finally found, I guess, what I wanted to talk about. And, I love my roots and I love talking about the history and the culture. And I am hoping that in doing so, maybe somebody will learn. For one thing, that, with any culture, we have stereotypes of us being, like unintelligent and, riddled with poverty and drugs. And I think that it could be said the same for, a lot of different areas and a lot of different cultures. But growing up, my dad is actually from Cleveland, Ohio, and my mom is from Bristol. And so I grew up down in Benhams outside of Bristol, but whenever I would go up to Cleveland, Ohio, they would make fun of my accent. But when I was living in Bristol, nobody said I had an accent.
Yeah,
So it was like I was living in between two worlds, and I was like, I don't know what you want from me. And so I was like always kind of trying to figure out, bridge that gap between, why do people hate our twang so much? Why do people hate our history so much? And so I started looking into it and then, digging a little deeper. And as I became a therapist, I started working in substance abuse and started seeing the darker sides to it. And as I move forward with the podcast into different seasons, I'm going to look into the folklore and like myths and, legends of stuff like that, and just kind of explore and hope that people enjoy it and, you know,
yeah.
get a kick out of it, because I'm getting a kick out of making it. It's fun, but
Yeah.
it's also informative.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Definitely, there's going to be some tribes. You're going to find your own tribe too, who definitely adopt those dark side. And yeah, being that you make reference more about culture, and despite there's a whole lot of things that needs to change in that particular point, but you just speaking, giving volumes to it, just speak a whole lot. Yeah, amazing. So you have a strong interest in stalking, its definition, its prevalence, and the consistent failure of law enforcement and the judicial system to take it seriously. What is stalking and why is it so misunderstood? What does that misunderstanding cost survivor?
It costs you your safety. I was stalked relentlessly for 4 years by my ex-husband. I was afraid to leave my house. I never knew if I was going to end up walking out the door and being shot. I had weapons in every room. I had something at every door. Like I mentioned, I would come home and there would be dead animals in my yard or on my door that were not killed naturally. They were left there, tried to kill my dog, numerous death threats. And when you tell the police, at least in Tennessee, uh, and to be honest, I'd much rather be stalked in Washington County, Virginia than Tennessee, Sullivan County, Tennessee, because in Washington County, Virginia, they take it seriously. In Sullivan County, Tennessee, they do not. I was told that I had to build my own case, and so I did. I built my own case. I, kept a record of all of the things that he was posting online. I kept a record of, he would send me mail, and he was supposed to have zero contact with me, period. He would find a way to forward me mail, even though he was supposed to give it to his attorney, who would give it to mine. Anything he could do, he would hack into my online accounts. I have no idea how he did this to this day, but he still did. He got onto my Amazon watch list and left me movies that were sexual in nature with titles that were really disgusting and referred back to the sexual assault. He did things like that a lot. A lot of the stuff that he used Pinterest to harass and terrify me, posting things that were very threatening and sexual in nature. Despite the one violation where they put him on probation and suspended it, Sullivan County would do nothing. They basically treated me like I was being hysterical, even though there were people banging on my house at night, trying to break in, messing with the tires on my car. And so finally, when it came time, because it took 4 years because COVID happened during this time, because we're looking at a time period of 2018 when it occurred, November of 2018 to June 6 of 2022, when he was finally found guilty and the trial was in Virginia. 2 years is what you get for a protective order in Virginia. So I filed for it to be renewed between a period, right before the trial carried over, the final trial. And he fought it. Well, he had posted pictures of guns, just all kinds of guns, and a picture of a fox that he had killed. And I have tattoos of foxes. Foxes are my favorite animal, along with my dogs. And all of the information that I took with me to that trial, Tennessee wouldn't accept, but Virginia did. Virginia accepted it into evidence and granted me the protective order. Then once he was found guilty for the sexual assault, they gave me a lifetime protective order that never has to be renewed. He can never have any contact with me ever again. So stalking, the problem with stalking is that people keep saying you have to prove it, you have to prove it, you have to prove it. Well, how much proof do we have to give you before you do something about it? And usually you have to be hurt before somebody does something about it. I mean, dead animals, stuff online, all of this stuff I was giving them in one state, and they were saying it wasn't good enough. And the other state was like, this is absolutely good enough.
Yeah.
This is insane. And when I got the protective order renewed and they accepted that information in as evidence, I came home and I wrote the prosecutor's office in Sullivan County and I told them, guess what? Thanks for nothing. All the stuff that you said was not good enough was accepted into evidence in the state of Virginia. So have a nice day.
Yeah. Ooh.
I couldn't, I had to. I was like, you guys, you've got to do better. And one of the things that I am hoping to do eventually is start a nonprofit about stalking that educates specifically law enforcement and trauma-informed, care, and on taking stalking seriously. Because I had spoken with a state senator about it, and the thing he told me is that by law, he is breaking it, but senators only write the law. They don't enforce it, and they can't make them enforce it. And that's really scary when you think about it, too. So you've got one branch writing the law, but they get to choose what they enforce.
Wow.
And
I love.
people they're dying because of this.
Yeah. Oh, it's really a whole lot. And yeah, so lastly, before we get to go, you are passionate about that the treatment of inmates in rural jails serving times for non-violent crime, particularly around suicide. What are you saying, and what do you think need to change?
I think that the care that the jails offer needs to be kinder. I think that if inmates are in there for nonviolent crimes, they need to be separated from those who are in there for violent crimes. But I don't think necessarily that their care needs to be any different. But there's not enough mental health care in jails. People are not given their medication and they're not given therapy. They claim that they are, but they're not. And I know this to be true because I had a friend in there who committed suicide while he was in jail for a nonviolent crime. And I would talk to him right before that happened, and he was not getting his antidepressant, and he was not getting therapy. He was hardly getting any time outside, and all the only thing that he was in there for was like a small theft crime. And I'm not trying to make that sound like it's any less of a crime. I'm just saying, in the grand scheme of things, we should do better, even for people who are in jail, because I'm sorry, people are people.
Yeah, amazing. It's really a whole lot. And I just hope, owing to this voice I'm lending out here and there, a whole lot really needs to change. And thank you so much for what you are doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So lastly, looking back at the woman who survived, what she survived, what are you most grateful about for the experience as devastating as it was because of the therapy, the advocates and the voice it made you?
It's a good question. My faith. I am most grateful for the fact that it did not take away my faith and my ability to still see that good exists in this world.
Good exists in this world. Yeah. And I think that's lovely because that was what keep you reaching out, being that it's easier to be silent at that particular moment than to keep reaching out. So when you know a whole lot of them are not going to kind of get answers. Yeah, it's really amazing. I'm glad that I did finally. Yeah, amazing. So for my audience who would love to reach out to you, to read couples of what you're putting up on Substack, to connect with you, and for those who would love to just reach out, yeah, how can they reach out and where is the best platform?
They can find me I have a website. It's kellsheets.com. And I have an Instagram for Hillbilly, Hillbilly Appalachia. It's on Facebook too. Hillbilly Appalachia. Just do a search for that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for such a raw, honest, and genuinely important conversations. Yeah, your journey just reminds us that survival is not the end of the story. It is often the beginning of the most powerful work a person can do. From Appalachia to a therapist, share to a podcast that refuse to look away from the darker truth. Of the region that deserve so much better. Yeah, your life is a proof that the stories are not supposed to tell out loud are often exactly the ones that need to be heard. Yeah, it's
Yep.
really a pleasure and an honor having you on the show.
Thank you.